Pushing the gate shut, Banksy hurried down the path at the side of the house. Voices. Mac and his mum. From the tone of their voices, they were having an argument. Banksy peeped through the kitchen window. His bag was just where he'd left it, under the table. Mac was seated. Mrs. McBride leaned against the worktop, still dressed in the smart, dark office suit she'd turned up to watch the match in. A few parents had come at the end of the game to pick up their offspring, but Mrs. McBride had been there throughout. She shook her head. "Just like your father was," she said, stubbing out her cigarette. Mac glared. "How am I?" "You're soft," said Mrs. McBride. "No verve, no drive to get on in the world." Banksy bit a nail. Mac glowered at his mum. "That's not fair." "How not?" "The football trials were only last week. It's early days. The start of my first full year at the school, and I've already managed to get picked for the team. That's not bad for a newcomer." "Not bad for a newcomer, you see?" Mrs. McBride sneered. Her voice was rising, higher and louder. "That's just what I'm talking about. Making allowances for yourself. Your father was the same, always justifying everything, always coming up with an excuse. He even had one, I don't doubt, to justify walking out on me and my 3-month-old baby son." Banksy chewed a sliver of fingernail. Mac's ashen face left no doubts. The moment described had been his last time with his father. "Comparing me like that isn't fair," snapped Mac. "I'm not saying getting in the team is all I want. You know it's not. I want to be captain." "What's happened to 'I'm going to be captain'?" "I am. I'm going to be." Mrs. McBride's piercing dark eyes had Mac skewered to his seat. She advanced. "I want to be proud of my son. I want you to make something of yourself, and I know you have it in you to do so." Banksy chewed the last remaining shreds of thumbnail. Mac's head had dropped. "I don't want to be a disappointment to you," he croaked. "Then don't be." Mrs. McBride touched the back of his neck. "Show me what you're made of, what you're really made of. Be a man."
This is how you remind me of what I really am. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you to say sorry. I was waiting on a door.
St Dunstan's school stood on high ground. The quiet tree-lined street ran up to the main road with its few shops. A short distance around the corner, the main road began its long, steep descent beside the heath. The last shop was Sid's newsagents. Banksy and Mac made their way along the high street. "Dunk skivvies." Mac drained his Coke can and crushed it in his hand. "That's what Powley's asking us to be." He seemed determined to grumble about the previous day's friendly at every opportunity. He flung the can at a roadside bin. "Dunk so brilliant, Dunk so gifted, Dunk so blinkin' marvellous." "Come on," chuckled Banksy. "We made a good impression. Powley liked you. He had nothing but praise for us after the match." Mac grunted. "Yeah, I suppose we played all right on the whole. More than all right." Mac managed a smile. "MacB and Banksy. Banksy and MacB. The big question now," said Banksy, "is do we get to keep our places?" Mac laughed. "No two ways about it, mate." "You're very certain," said Banksy, all of a sudden. Mac widened his eyes. "The prophecy," he chuckled. As the two boys span round, Dunk skidded his bike to a stop against the curb. "Guys," he grinned, "on your way to Sid's?" "Yup," Banksy nodded. Dunk jerked his front wheel up the curb. "Excellent result yesterday. Powley's well pleased." Standing on the pedals, he nosed the bike between them. "We were just talking about you," said Mac, "as it happens." "Nothing good, I hope." 4 quality goals, said Mac. "What could be bad about that, first game of the season?" "A great team effort," Dunk nodded. "With you two feeding through the excellent passes over and over, it was hard to go wrong." "You're too modest," said Mac. "Come on, you don't get to be solo striker and team captain without being pretty special." Dunk laughed and shook his head. "There's Mel and Dawn." He nodded across the street. "I should go and say hello. Maybe see you in Sid's." Mac and Banksy watched him weave his way through the traffic. "You've changed your tune," chuckled Banksy. "What are you talking about?" 4 quality goals, said Banksy, imitating his friend. "You're too modest. Dunk was complimentary about you and me. But he means it. And I don't, do you?" Mac shrugged and grinned. "I'm off home, mate. Got no money for Sid's today. Catch you later." What was all that about? Jamming another wine gum into his cheek, Banksy followed Dunk round the side of the shop to where his bike was locked. There had been an ugly moment in the newsagents. Mel, Don and some other boys had followed Dunk inside. Mel and Don had shouted abuse. Dunk had tried to ignore them, but they had only got louder. Only when Sid had picked up the phone and threatened to call the police had they finally cleared off. "They think it's down to me," said Dunk. "Who gets in the team and who doesn't. They're saying I've been disloyal because you and Mac got a trial game." "That's stupid," said Banksy. "It's not up to you." Dunk nodded. "Kind of understandable, though." Slotting bike lights into front and rear brackets, he switched them on to check the batteries. "It's nothing definite, okay? But from what Powley's told me, you and Mac are favourites to start Saturday's league opener." "Yeah?" Banksy heard the excitement in his own voice. He jerked his thumb towards the shop. "You told them that too?" Dunk nodded. "No wonder they were narked." The two boys made their way along the pavement. Light was fading, colour draining from the world. "I should scoot," said Dunk. He patted the crossbar. "I'd offer you a lift, but I ought to get a move on." "No problem," said Banksy. "I'm cutting across the heath anyway. It won't take me long." "Laters then." "Yeah, laters." Pushing off from the pavement, Dunk vanished into the traffic. Banksy turned to set off across the heath. An instant later, he was spinning back towards the road. Somehow he already recognised the stomach-churning sound. As he ran, follow-on noises floated up the hill. A crunch, the tinkle of glass, another crunch, another crunch. A terrible silence. And then screaming, a woman's wail rising into the air. The traffic was stationary. People were craning their necks, opening doors, some even climbing out as he ran by down the hill. Tick, 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 a flicker of wheel spokes, still gently turning in the dying light. A twisted bike frame, its back broken beneath a car. Just beyond, standing on the grass, a man held a woman. "He just crashed into me," the woman sobbed. "He just flew through the air and smashed into me." At their feet, another man crouched on the ground beside a body. Two twisted legs. A familiar face. Two terrified eyes. Banksy knelt. Touched blood. Dunk's eyes fluttered shut.